My name is Catherine Calamia, also known as the comic book critic Comic Uno. My question to you is, what's the modern female superhero? Woman in Refrigerators is a comic book trope created by the now popular comic book writer Gail Simone. She wrote a blog discussing about female characters that were mistreated for the sake of the male story. Woman in Refrigerators gets its namesake from the Green Lantern comic, where Kyle Rayner's girlfriend was killed and stuffed into a refrigerator. This was meant to cause trauma in Kyle Rayner's life.
I think it's certainly a trope that exists. It's certainly a trope that writers sometimes fall victim to. It's something that I'm very aware of, and it was something that I was aware of going into Injustice. When I first had to have Superman kill Lois and their unborn child, there was no part of me that wanted to do that. Like when they told me that that's what I had to do, I called my mum and said, "Mum, they want me to do this." But and I copped a lot of flack for it, and I think, I understand where that comes from. You can't kill off women and it only affects the guy. It's only about the guy. It's only about his story. I tried to make that clear in Injustice that what was taken away was their life together. And I hit on that at one stage that, it was everything that Lois would have been as well, was what the Joker took away in that moment. When I wrote Earth 2, one of the first things I did was bring back Lois, who is dead in that thing, and I brought her back in a robot body, because that was the only way I could do it by talking to people, but she actually steps out of a refrigerator.
There are many female characters that fell under this trope, one of the most well-known being Barbara Gordon.
By the 1980s, Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, was not a huge character. She was now really support staff for Bruce, and several stories showed that she was getting out of superhero stuff and going into politics, and that was going to be her thing now. And then the Killing Joke, she opens the door, the Joker's there, and boom, she's shot. The Joker makes fun of her as she's lying on the floor bleeding, makes a few paralysis jokes as she is now paralyzed, and then undresses her and takes photos of her. And he shows these photos to her father, Gordon. What he's doing to Barbara, undressing her against her will, taking photographs of her naked and bleeding, is to cause pain to two men in the story.
Killing Joke was a little ahead of me. Yeah, that's the rough part about it too. I think I wanted to find out why Batgirl was in a wheelchair as a kid, but they're not going to hand me Killing Joke, because how can you be 12 and read it?
After the Killing Joke, Barbara became the hero known as Oracle. Taking on this identity allowed the Killing Joke story to be hers. Barbara was now paralyzed, and she had to become a new kind of hero.
Barbara Gordon's transformation into Oracle demonstrated that she was not only resilient following this incredibly traumatic experience with the Joker, but that she was able to empower herself and able to find the strengths that she had regardless of what he took away from her. In the very first issue of Batgirl in the New 52 run, Barbara Gordon is exploring her role again as Batgirl, and so while she's physically encountering some of the similar types of crime fighting and situations she would be in as Batgirl, she's also experiencing some triggers and some flashbacks that relate to her trauma. Just in that first issue demonstrates that a superhero, one who's well known and certainly one of the most beloved female superheroes, is battling psychological pain and is really demonstrating an accurate representation of what a real mental health illness would look like.
So with Batgirl, the lighter run kind of came as a shock to me because I was previously reading and loving Gail Simone's run, which was kind of more intense and dark, and it's actually the first Batgirl book I ever read, so it made me really fall in love with the character. And then when they announced this bubbly, colorful, tween kind of Batgirl, it really was surprising. It took me a really long time to separate the two runs, and to be honest, I really didn't like that very bubbly Batgirl at first. That I was like, what did they do to my Barbara Gordon? But then eventually, it's been long enough at this point now that I can look back on it and currently read the series and actually enjoy it because I can see them as two different things. I can say officially that I do like this incarnation of Batgirl, especially for what I'm seeing it do for the demographic of teen girls that are coming in and reading it in flocks. That's amazing.
Another Bat hero who fell under the woman in refrigerators trope was Stephanie Brown. Stephanie was first introduced in the early 90s as the hero named Spoiler. She became a hero to spoil the plans of her father, the Clue Master, a C-list villain. Spoiler became a very likable character and stuck around as Tim Drake's love interest. In the Robin series, Tim Drake had to quit being Robin for a time. Batman allowed Stephanie to take over the mantle. This didn't last for long, and Batman fired Stephanie. This was a catalyst to Stephanie's downward spiral. To prove herself to Batman, she stole plans from the Batcave. This led her into the middle of a gang war. She was beaten to death, leading Tim to become Robin again. This was Stephanie's woman in refrigerators moment, and fans knew that Stephanie was being mistreated. Their voices were heard. Stephanie returned as the new Batgirl, a praise run by Brian Q. Miller. But Stephanie didn't last in the spotlight for too long. When the New 52 was announced, she was replaced by Barbara Gordon. Where was Stephanie? Fans had the same question. DC received the message that people wanted Stephanie. She eventually returned to the DC Universe as Spoiler, starting her hero journey from the beginning. What makes Stephanie so interesting is that she's a hero that never gives up, not just on the printed page, but also in her publication history. She's the bright side of the Bat family. Granted, maybe that's why DC didn't know what to do with her. Now, let's talk Spider-Gwen, one of the most popular modern female superheroes. A hero that span out of a woman in refrigerators moment. Gwen Stacy was Spider-Man's first love. In The Amazing Spider-Man issue 121 and 122, published in 1973, she died in an arc called The Night Gwen Stacy Died. The Green Goblin, Spider-Man's arch-nemesis, threw Gwen Stacy off the Brooklyn Bridge. As Gwen free falls into the water, Spider-Man spins a web to try and save her. Instead, the web breaks her neck from the impact. This caused Peter even more guilt. He couldn't save Uncle Ben. He couldn't save Captain Stacy. And now, he couldn't save his first love. The old Parker luck continued. Many people consider this the end of the Silver Age, the end of innocence in comic books. There are many comic book characters that come back from the dead. It's the perks of the serialized medium. But as the decades passed, it became less likely that Gwen would ever return. Until she did.
Recently, in the crossover Spider-Verse, where Spider-Man and readers were meeting all these different versions of himself or other similarly themed heroes throughout the multiverse, we met Spider-Gwen, who in her reality not only didn't die on that bridge, but she was always the spider hero rather than Peter Parker. And people really dug it not just because of that, but because she had a unique version of the costume that was truly her own. It wasn't just Spider-Man's costume with hips or something. And she also really made other differences in her reality. So in her reality, she's actually her own character and not just a copy of Spider-Man's girlfriend, but with powers. And people really dug it. They dug that she was in a band, and all these things came together. And it also showed, for some people, that even if you fridge a character, they can have a second life later. A later writer can show, you know what, there was no reason to kill this character. There's a lot of potential. We can actually just give them a new direction and a new story to explore.
I think Spider-Gwen became such a popular character because it's so new and fresh, and I really think established characters like Spider-Man really need that once in a while. I personally love Spider-Gwen because I have never been able to see myself more as a comic book character than with Spider-Gwen. I have always loved Spider-Man for as long as I can remember, but to see a girl take up the Spider-Man name was just pretty awesome.
I have more boys picking up Spider-Gwen than Spider-Man at young readers anyway. It's because she seems funner, she's fresher, she's not dating supermodels and things like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, I think they find the younger, more relatable thing. Yeah, I have one kid, he buys Bart Simpson and Spider-Gwen, and that's all he wants.
A hero that has become one of the faces for the modern female superhero is Supergirl, because of her new show, on CBS.
The Supergirl TV show, seeing it succeed is kind of a redemption for the character of Supergirl, because Supergirl the movie is kind of looked at now as a reason why superhero movies or any kind of live action story can't be a success. And so I think it's important that we see Supergirl succeed on TV, because this shows that maybe it wasn't Supergirl that was the problem. But I think audiences back in the 80s weren't ready for a superhero movie led by a female. And so I think now we're seeing the shift in that television audiences are more willing to give it a shot. At Supergirl Radio, we've gotten lots of emails from parents who are excited about the Supergirl TV show because it's a way that they can share superheroes and Supergirl specifically with their kids. And in a lot of cases, I've noticed it's dads wanting to share superheroes with their daughters.
There's so much room for improvement, but the industry is moving toward a great direction. If you look at the books that are coming out now, there's, I think, a pretty noticeable difference from what especially Marvel and DC were doing a few years ago.
I've been reading comic books all my life, and female representation was something that was very important to me when creating my own comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter, published by Short Fuse Media. Like Father, Like Daughter is about a teenage girl named Casey Ryder. She seems like your average high school student, except for the fact that her father left her to become a full-time superhero. Invulnerable is the only superhero in the world, so everyone loves him, but Casey knows his true colors. In the first issue, Casey becomes her own worst enemy when she inherits her father's abilities. This comic book plays with superhero tropes. At the center of the story, it's about a father-daughter relationship. Casey is not a strong modern hero because she can punch things really hard. What makes Casey a modern hero is that she has multiple layers to her character. Casey and her father's physical abilities are being invulnerable, but the story centers around their emotional vulnerability. In this series, it is important to me for not just the female characters to have layers, but also the male characters. This is seen prominently through Casey and Invulnerable's different journeys of becoming a hero. So what is the modern female superhero? Well, I've learned there is no definition. The female hero should not be two-dimensional and fit into one category. They should have their own journey. The hero who can find strength in her disabilities. A hero who finds hope even when all hope seems lost. A hero who can be a drummer in a rock band. A hero who doesn't want to be a hero at all.